Okay, here we go. All right, so this is angles and arcs number 2. So we're still in our circles unit. Directions just say find the measure of the arc or angle indicated, so we're just looking for the question marks. Assume that lines which appear tangent are tangent. So we're going to explain what all of that terminology means. On the first few problems, we have these lines going through the circle that are not going through the center, but they do intersect the circle in 2 places. So these kinds of lines, this and this, are called chords. And that's a word we've probably all seen before, but it's a little different. And when the 2 chords intersect like this, they make a bunch of, or they make 4 angles in here. And what they're giving us is not the angles that are inside the circle, but the measures of the arcs on the outside. So they're telling us that this is 55 and that this is 85. And what happens with these angles in here, the one with the question mark and the one across from it, is these 2 angles have to be the same. And the way that this works out, it ends up being the average of these 2 arcs. So we literally take 55 plus 85 to get 140. And then take 140 and divide by 2. And that makes this angle 70. So this angle is 70, and the angle across from it 70. And if we wanted to, we could find these other angles using things that we've done in previous classes, knowing that a straight line is 180. I could come up with this being 110, because that would make those add up to 180, and this 110. So if they give you a couple of those arcs or an arc and an angle, you can actually find a lot of other information on your circle. So we're going to do one more like this, and then we're going to mix it up just a little bit. So on number 2, we have 103 degrees here and 115 here. And again, they're looking for just that angle that goes with one of the arcs. So both of these angles are the same, and they will be the average. So we'll take 103 plus 115, which comes out 218. Take 218 divided by 2, and we get 109 degrees. So it's pretty straightforward when they give you the 2 arcs that go with one of those angles in question. It gets a little trickier if they give you an arc and an angle, but I'll show you how we can figure this out. There's a couple of different ways. So down here on number 3, they've given us 80 here. We know because they're vertical angles that this would also be 80. That's just something we've learned in the past. And we're trying to figure out, this would be the average of 75 in our question mark. So when the numbers are easy like this, you can kind of think, okay, this is the average. That means that 80 is in the middle. 75 is going to be smaller, so I'm going to put 75 over here. 80 is in the middle. And then we have to figure out, okay, so that's a distance of 5 this way. So the other number must be bigger, and it'll be a distance of 5 this way. So if I add 5 to 80, we get 85, and that would be your missing arcs. So we could say 85 degrees. If you don't like that, you can also do an algebraic method where you say x plus 75 divided by 2 equals 80. And some people like this better just because it's a little bit more straightforward. So you first get rid of the fraction by multiplying both sides by 2. So I'd have x plus 75 equals 80 times 2, which would make that 160. And you subtract 75 from both sides, and you end up with x equals 85. So it's the same answer. You can reason through it with logic, which I think helps if you're doing a standardized test like an ACT, SAT. Just being able to go, okay, that's 5 away, the other one has to be 5 away. One's smaller than 80, one's bigger than 80. That's a pretty quick way, but this will also work, and if you're just more comfortable with an algebraic method that you can just set up and solve, you get the same answer either way. So Meredith is my only student today. She gets to choose which method we're going to use on the next problem. So you like method 1 or method 2, Meredith?
The X one.
The X one. So she likes the algebraic method. So we'll go ahead and do that. So we're saying basically that this question mark is X. And so if we were setting up to find the average, X plus 50 divided by 2 is 117. So basically saying if I average these 2 arcs together, that average is the middle angle, and we can solve it that way. So what we do first is multiply both sides by 2, and I'll show a little bit more work on this one. So multiply this side by 2, that gets rid of the 2 in the bottom. Take 117 times 2 over here, and we end up with 234. And then we still have x plus 50. Subtract 50 from both sides, and we get 184 degrees. And you can always check it. Take 184 and add it to 50. You'll get 234. Divide by 2. Make sure it comes out 117. But that's the algebraic method. A lot of people who are comfortable with algebra like that because they don't have to think very hard. It's just using the same formula as above. Okay, so let's take a look at something different. So these are called chords, and they stop when they get to the edge of the circle. I always think of them as being like guitar strings. They just go across and then they stop. We have a couple of different types of things in the next picture. This line just touches the circle at point K, and that is called a tangent line, which is confusing because we also have the word tangent when we do trig stuff. This is different. I don't know why they use the same word, they just do. And then this line is like a chord, but it keeps going. Whether it kept going or not, you're going to use the same method, but because it keeps going, we're going to call this a secant. If you have a chord that goes past, they call that a secant. That's also a trig word, but we're not doing trig, so that can be confusing. It's just another word we use with circles. And maybe they're connected to trig somehow that my brain isn't remembering right now, but just to clarify that we are not doing triangles. All right, so we have this arc over here that starts at K and goes around to J, and they're telling us that that's 146 degrees. And then we're trying to find the angle that's inside here. And this is a similar situation to what we saw yesterday with our inscribed angles. The angle is half of the arc. So let's write that down. The angle is half of the arc. And that has to be the angle that's inside that particular arc. So our angle is going to be half of 146. We can take 146 and divide by 2. We get 73 degrees. And that's pretty straightforward. On the next problem, they're asking us for this angle, but they're giving us the arc over here. So we have to remember that a whole circle has 360 degrees. So this arc, we have 360 minus 220, which means this arc right here is 140 degrees. And 140 degrees is the arc that goes with this angle. So then we just take 140 divided by 2, and we get 70. So it's a really important fact that we looked at earlier that all the way around the circle, if you took all of the arcs and add them up, they're always 360 degrees. Okay, so we're going to go backwards a bit. They're going to give us the arc, and then the angle, and we have to find the arc. So the arc would be 2 times as big as the angle if we're just going backwards from what we did on 5 and 6. So if this is 85, that arc that goes with it is going to be 2 times 85, which gives us 170 degrees. And you want to make sure that the arc that they're looking for goes with that angle, that the angle is inside that arc. So when we look at number 8, it's going to look a little different. They've given us this angle 48. If I take 48 times 2, I get 96, and that goes over here with this arc. But the question mark is on this one. So I'm going to pick on Meredith since she's here. How do I find the other arc? 360 minus the 96. She's absolutely right on because she's been paying attention. So 264 degrees is my answer, and that's it.